All right, let's talk Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Obviously, this is one of the best teams in the country, and boy, oh boy, do they look like it in the middle of a big winning streak. Of course, huge matchup this weekend. But lost in the hustle and bustle of the playoff push is a really smart job the Notre Dame Fighting Irish have done. In fact, I would argue they've actually outsmarted everyone that was thinking they should go direction A. They went direction B, and they look absolutely set up because of it. We'll break down that news. Plus, recruiting news, good stuff for Notre Dame, and of course, more interesting data. All of that in just a second. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. Are the Notre Dame Fighting Irish back-to-back losses to start the year, but they are cruising as they head into a big-time matchup this weekend against Pitt. And as we're getting closer to the finale of the regular season, everyone's looking at the college football playoff and the permutations of who could get in, who could get left out. And there's a clear and obvious result that's just appearing in front of everybody, that if Notre Dame runs the table, they are going to get in. They don't have to play in a college football, conference championship game. They don't have to play in the Big 12, Big 10, SEC championship game. They don't need someone to lose. They don't need someone to win. All they have to do for them is just to get in. It's just win. It's easy, simple, maybe not easy, but it's simple. And that's what Notre Dame has in front of them because of their decision to stay independent. And the folks over at Bleacher Report had an interesting article talking about it. Let's pull it up. Then I'll get to another interesting source on the other side. This is again courtesy of Bleacher Report. If all goes according to plan on Saturday morning, the only remaining obstacle standing between Notre Dame and the college football playoff will be Syracuse and Stanford. In all fairness to both of those programs, we're nearing done deal status again if they beat Pitt. No conference championship game to stress over. No drama over the bracket bubble. Heck, the Irish are likely to host a playoff game for the second consecutive season by the time it's done. That's also true. Despite losing 2 games to begin the season, albeit close games against quality teams, Notre Dame still has everything in front of it. Despite playing outside of a conference, thus being able to watch champions being crowned before the bracket is finalized, Marcus Freeman's group will have the opportunity to take last year's runner-up showing one step further. The article goes on to say, we're getting ahead of ourselves, sure, but not by much. A win over Pitt on Saturday and the conversation will change. The Notre Dame fans will roar, as they should, and the Notre Dame haters, of which there are many, will yearn for change, much like they have in the past. And Notre Dame should absolutely do nothing different. Don't listen to the haters. Embrace them. Don't join a conference. Stay free as long as possible. Whether the rest of the country wants to hear this or not, Notre Dame has never been in a better position as an independent than it is right now. So obviously in the middle of COVID and trying to play football in 2020, Notre Dame played in the ACC, right? And they got, a lot of, I don't want to say praise, but got a lot of attention for that, right? Obviously, a big reason was for scheduling. And most so-called experts thought that was the first step in terms of Notre Dame football moving into a big-time conference, most likely the ACC, maybe the Big 10, right? The overwhelming majority wisdom was that Notre Dame was probably going to be no longer an independent. But the Fighting Irish the entire time said, no, we're going to go back to being an independent, and that's who we are. That's what we're always going to be. Listen, I'm not a fan of Notre Dame. I'm a fan of college football and college football history, and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish football program being independent, I think, is one of the cool mystique things about just the college football landscape as a whole. And Notre Dame recognized that, but they also recognized, and this is where they outsmarted everyone, guys, that being independent has its advantages, especially in the middle of conference realignment. And there was a post that came out yesterday that I wanted to talk about. I guess it was the day before yesterday. It was when it came out. I saw it yesterday. And it's courtesy of Ari Wasserman over at On3 Sports. And he responded to a post from Ralph DeRusso, who noted that Texas A&M could make the SEC championship game without playing Ole Miss, Bama, Georgia, Oklahoma, or Vandy, and Georgia Tech could make the ACC championship game without playing Miami, Louisville, Virginia, SMU, or Duke. Wasserman then responded to that by saying, it cannot be overstated how nonsensical this last round of conference realignment was. It hurt the sport. The fans didn't want it. It makes no sense. And now the college football playoff format is off center as a result of the Pac-12 not existing. The whole thing is so stupid. And I think Wasserman is correct here. And Notre Dame was the smartest person of the bunch. Everyone was saying, join a conference. Maybe you'll make more money, maybe not, but it'll be good for you. You'll get that conference championship game boost, right? You'll be part of a conference. You'll have regular games. Maybe it'll have some positive impacts on recruiting, right? Big 10 kids or ACC kids. Maybe you'll have a chance to do more things, right? A lot of I think people that actually think they're smart, I don't know how smart they really were, really truly believed it would have been in Notre Dame's best interest to go independent in the Fighting Irish correctly and give the organization, the school, a lot of credit here. Top-down leadership matters, and this is why. They just completely ignored that siren call. They said, no, we're going to be independent. We're good. We think we're in a strong position. And with conference realignment approaching, Notre Dame realized that they had more to lose by trying to join a conference than gain. There was so much variability. There was so much confusion. College football playoff format changing. Notre Dame could have joined the Pac-10, old Pac-12, and said, we want to play with those guys for whatever reason. I don't know why they would have. And then the conference could have fallen apart, right? They could have joined the ACC, and then the ACC could have fallen apart. They could have joined the Big Ten, and the Big Ten could have fallen apart, and the Big 12 could have taken a lot of teams, right? There's a lot of things that could happen. It was a very, very Wild West moment there during conference realignment. As Wasserman, correctly points out, it was pretty foolish. The results of it were quite awful if you're a fan of college football at large, especially now that we look at these matchups and these teams. I mean, Texas A&M, they're the highest ranked SEC team in the country, and they haven't played the top 5 other SEC teams in the country, right? That's absolutely bonkers to think about, but that's just the reality that we find ourselves in the college football landscape. And this is why Notre Dame was smart. They avoided all of this. They stood above the fray. And if you have the leverage, if you have the position, which Notre Dame obviously does, being the program that it is and the historical entity that it is, don't lower yourself. Never lower your standards. Don't join the fray. Stay above it. Notre Dame was smart enough to avoid it, and now they're in a strong position. They win these next 3 games, and then they're in the playoff very comfortably, I might add, with a great chance to return, I honestly think, to the national championship game. All right, we got a lot more to get to, but first, this weekend, big game, of course, against Pitt. Ranked matchup, massive game, of course, huge implications. Fighting Irish fans in the comment section below. Now's your chance. Give us your prediction. Final score, Notre Dame Pitt. Put it in the comment section below. But let's shift a little bit. It's similar, this upcoming story, but it's in the same vein, and it's recruiting news. Let's go ahead and pull this up right here, courtesy of Slap the Sign. Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame football program have shown no hesitation in trying to raid Penn State of its prospects and its coaches. Since James Franklin was fired early this season, those efforts, especially to players that are desperate to land, have ramped up considerably. Such is the case with former Michigan State commit and longtime Penn State prospect Khalil Terry, who gave his new pledge on Wednesday afternoon. Terry had been predicted to land with the Fighting Irish for a little while now, but things started swimming aggressively that way after he came to South Bend to watch Notre Dame take on Navy Saturday night. After Terry's most recent visit, several recruiting analysts immediately put in official predictions for the Irish to win the day. The report goes on to say, just a few days later, Terry made it official, announcing on a CBS Sports live stream he was pledging to the blue and gold. The energy in and around the stadium was electric, Terry told Rivals Vice President of Recruiting Steve Wiltfong just after his Notre Dame visit. It's kind of matched everything I heard about Notre Dame. It was clear that Terry just didn't just like what he saw on the visit, but like what he heard. The biggest thing is that they have a plan for me. They understand my skill set and are able to explain how and where I fit. The academics are kind of a given. It's Notre Dame. More than anything, my coaches and parents are comfortable with the way Notre Dame is recruiting me. The other really good thing, which is kind of the main thing as well, is that they'll always be in the hunt for a national title. That last paragraph, I think, speaks so much about Notre Dame's strength, and it aligns perfectly with the independent element of it, right? You talk about the academics, right? A lot of these conferences, they feel like, because it's a conference thing, right? You have your rivals, you have your rankings, where if you finish 5th in the conference, suddenly you got the AD and the boosters like, hey, listen, let's throw the GPA out the window a little bit and go buy us some players, right? Listen, that's just the way it works in big-time college football. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people ignore it, but that's just a fact, right? When you don't have conferences, when you don't have that issue, right, you can focus on academics. You can take a long-term approach. You can focus on developing young men and developing good football players parallel instead of just the football aspect, which, of course, Notre Dame has done historically, and they continue to do under Marcus Freeman. And as Terry mentioned here, it's a key positive element in the recruiting. Other schools, they don't do that, or a lot of them don't, I should say, and it puts Notre Dame in a strong position. It's one of the reasons why academically inclined programs like Stanford tend to really consistently struggle, because other teams in that conference, if Stanford gets good, they find a way to, that don't have the academic requirements to sit there and say, okay, we can overcome Stanford by maybe avoiding some academic things. Maybe we just do what we can to get guys to 2 O's and 2 1s. And hey, you got a smart football player, he wants to be an engineer. Listen, man, study an easier major, right? Get that GPA up a little bit. Listen, that happens. Right? That happens all the time. There's been, players, Big Ten, SEC, that have come out and said that publicly on numerous occasions. So this is something that we all know is part of college football. But we don't get that with Notre Dame, and as Terry mentioned, that's a critical part. We also talk about the fact that they're always going to be in the college football playoff conversation, the national championship conversation. And I think a big part of that is they don't have to worry about winning a conference. They're only focused on winning a title. I played small-time college football, FCS Division I level in the Southern Conference, which some of you may or may not be familiar with. But I always thought it was interesting that when I got there was this big focus on winning the SoCon, winning the Southern Conference. That was the most important thing, winning the SoCon. And I always thought, isn't the goal to eventually win a national title, get to the national championship playoffs, right? Like playoffs, isn't that the goal? The reality is there's just the mindset, if you're in a conference, the goal is to win the conference, and what happens after that is sort of a bonus. It's sort of a plus. Notre Dame doesn't have that problem. It's an advantage. They don't care about the conference. They're not in a conference, of course. They get to be focused all the time on playoff football, on national championship football. They're not worried about, man, we have got to beat this conference opponent in week 3, otherwise we could be done in conference play early. Listen, if we drop a game early in the season, not the end of the world, because we can figure out how to improve and finish the year strong. Other programs don't have that luxury. They have to treat every conference game with just a lot of vigor, because if they drop an early one and it keeps them out of the conference championship game, they're in big trouble. Notre Dame, listen, you lose to Northern Illinois last year. It's tough loss. You don't want it to happen all the time, but you can overcome it, right? Same thing with the losses earlier this year to A&M and Miami, right? They don't derail your season. Obviously, we see that now. They got a chance to, of course, make a serious run at this thing. And Notre Dame, again, it's part of their entire attitude. This is not something that happens by accident. Because of their willingness to stay independent, despite the siren song of conference realignment and a lot of money, they find themselves in a great position, both this year and, as we can see from the recruiting news, for the future as well. But let's end on the conversation about the future, the near future, and that, of course, is this weekend's matchup against Pitt. So I have on the screen in front of you guys here the ESPN matchup. You can see the matchup predictor courtesy of ESPN Analytics. Notre Dame, pretty decent favorite, 3-1 favorite, 77% chance to win over Pitt, 23%. Game is at Pitt in the great state of Pennsylvania. So again, the fact that Notre Dame is such a heavy favorite is a sign of strength for the Fighting Irish. When you go down to the odds makers, courtesy of ESPN Bet Sportsbook, they sell a very similar story here. Notre Dame is a current 12.5 point favorite. They opened up as an 11.5 point favorite, and money has only moved to the Notre Dame side of the ledger. They now are a 12.5 point favorite, which I think is an indictment, I think, of some people of Pitt as how real they are or how real they aren't. But it also is a statement of how good Notre Dame is. And no one wants to bet against Notre Dame, right? You can make an argument no one wants to bet for Pitt, but right now there's no money. There's no big pools of dollars of professional gamblers and sports books saying, I think Notre Dame has some flaws. I think they're a flawed team. That's usually when you see these lines shift. When you see someone open up as a double digit against a ranked team, like Pitt's a ranked team, if you open up as a double digit favorite, you usually see pools of money go against the road team because, you'll find some gambler somewhere, some big sports book, they'll say, Team A, they've got some flaws, right? They're bad on defense, their O-line stinks or whatever, right? I think on the road they'll have some issues. Let me pour some money on that side. Not getting that with Notre Dame. There's no professional person out there right now that thinks there's any serious, potentially damning flaws to this Fighting Irish program, especially this 2025 version. And that's why I think they're a serious threat to win the national championship. Not just make the national championship game, but win the whole darn thing. They don't have the flaws, guys. Run the football, quarterback playing better, receivers making big plays, O-line, defense. They check so many boxes, coaching, across the board. They can win on the road, at home, cold weather, warm weather. They can do it all. This team, I think, if they finish strong, I think they will not only make the playoff, but be just a serious force to make a lot of noise and, in my opinion, have a great chance to win the whole darn thing.